So, Mr. Daryl, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fabulous. Okay, so we're gonna start your your interview questions.
Okay.
So could you just briefly, I don't know if you're able to turn your camera on so that people can see you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Could you just briefly, for the people that have just joined us, introduce yourself?
Great. So once again, my name is Daryl Bosu, an ecologist by training, but over the years, I've transformed into somebody who engages in local community empowerment, basically looking at the local community commerce and how that fits in within their overall development goals. Also looking at how national level policies and also regional level have impact positively on communities and the way they're able to assert themselves in the way they meet their livelihood needs. And now a lot of my work focuses on business and human rights issues within the extractive sector. So I'm a full-time practitioner, but also with training in green business modeling. And I've had my first degree in natural resources ecology and then also MPhil in the same field. I finished LLB not too long ago, so hopefully I could join Oliver in the courtroom very soon to advocate for community rights and also for human rights issues. So today I'm happy to share with you the developments in Ghana related to the environment and how we can all, particularly those in diaspora, can support all the solutions that Ghanaians are pushing for down here. Thank you. I've requested to share my slide. I have a few slides just to take me through the presentation. So if you allow me, I will appreciate that. Let me see if I can do that now.
I think I'm allowed. Yeah, I've allowed.
Okay, great, great. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking to the environmental issues, and basically, I think there were some cues in terms of questions for me to try and respond to. And once we start talking about these issues, I'm sure all of us know where we are going to, what the issues we are going to be paying attention to. And specifically, to start with, I mean, I'm just going to show you a few slides just to bring you to keep you focused on the presentation I'm making. But this slide you are seeing on the screen now is many years ago, many years ago, and that was somewhere around 2016. But I can tell you that if you travel anywhere in the country and you come across a river this good, this clean, I mean, then I'm sure you have been transformed into another realm, not in Ghana. So this is what's our reality now is. Maybe to yeah. There's our reality now. I mean, so I'm speaking to the issues of the environmental challenges of our time. And you can't talk about the environment without already trying to ask yourself, what do you immediately see around you? And we used to see very clean rivers, lush forests. And I'll say, if you are somebody who grew up or have listened to your parents talk about where they come from in Ghana, they talked a lot about how there used to be, I'll say, wild animals almost everywhere. I mean, I've worked in almost all of every part of the country across several regions, and a lot of work even in the north where you see animals come into the town. I guess some of you know about Boabi, Fieme, and all of that. In the southern part, southwestern part of Ghana, which is more the cocoa regions, high forest zone, there is a lot of also wildlife in these areas, but that is not the same anymore. And so talking about the issues that is really now critical to us as in terms of Ghana's environment, the biggest issue we are facing now is with environmental destruction, particularly coming from Galamsey. And the definition for Galamsey, as has been said, yes, is about illegal small-scale mining, but that has evolved because Galamsey, as we know it to be, used to be more of anybody going to the ground, going to collect gold, processing it and selling. And then it came to people also doing illegal, even those with permits and all of that. But we have evolved the definition of Galamsey to also cover even irresponsible mining. So it's not only somebody who is illegally doing a mining activity, but somebody who even working within the remit of legality or remit of the law also does not follow, lay down procedures and processes for really going about their mining activities. And then when we talk about irresponsible mining, we're also talking about leaders who are not ensuring due diligence in the granting of mining concessions and leases, allowing miners to go and destroy community lands, abusing the rights of communities, and even also destroying other critical, essential needs of society. So Galamsey now could be illegal mining, not having a permit and doing mining. It could be also somebody doing legal mining who has a permit but not doing the right thing. And if you're a leader and you're not also ensuring due diligence in terms of the issuance of mining concessions and leases, you're also engaged in Galamsey. And Galamsey, as we know, has come to really shape our landscape now. I can say within the last almost 20 years, it has become one of the biggest drivers of deforestation in Ghana and also destruction of our water bodies and rivers. And this is something we see very much around us. And I have to say, nowhere in Ghana is spared. Our forest reserves are affected. Our cocoa farms are affected. And the picture you are seeing now, the one on the left is a forest reserve. The one on the right is a cocoa farm where you have seen the miners really sitting right at the boundary, the edge of the cocoa farm, digging away. And you get to see in some few months, they will go into the cocoa farm and actually raise it down as well. And this is also, this has become very common since all over. If you travel from the south of Ghana towards the western regions, almost to the Ashanti region, there was even a time where the miners were blatantly digging the center of Konongo Township. And it's only Konongo. If you go to Asankragua in the western region, if you come to the eastern region, Osino, if you come to Chebi areas, the miners really know no bounds now. They are digging away and they don't care what the law says because they know that it counts with no consequences if they engage themselves in illegal mining. And you can even see that our hills and mountains are not left untouched. The right image you see is actually miners sitting on top of the mountain and really digging up there and letting the waste flow down to the downstream, and all the people around there, you can imagine what is going to happen to them. And we acknowledge that Galamsey, as has been said, many people have said that it is happening because there is a need for livelihood. And that has been the excuse many people have given. The question is it really about livelihood or rather is about people living large? Some years ago, if you asked me whether it's about livelihood, then I could have said yes, because then there was a question of the government giving out mining leases to big, I'll say, corporate companies, but the communities who were living close to these areas were not getting the benefit of this. And also, how was government using the resources in a way that could benefit everybody outside the mining communities? Then it translated to politicians now making an excuse that if the boys are hungry and there's no job to do, why don't you allow them to go and dig anywhere, whether they have licenses or not? And then the excuses also became the fact that the Minerals Commission is not able to process concessions on time. So the longer it takes to process a concession, that means that people can be allowed or can find a way to go and dig even before they get their mining leases, which has also been one of the biggest drivers of Galamsey. So yes, people have used the excuse of livelihood as a reason for mining. But if you really go in depth and do an analysis, it's not just about livelihood. There's also a very big element of greed, which is pushing people. And as you know, is moved from greed for people's sustenance and also lifestyles to even shaping and funding political parties. And that's why we realize that even this particular election Ghana finds itself in, a lot of the financing for DCs or for MPs or parliamentary candidates, all of them, they are having to scrape the land and also use that to fund their political activities, which is putting our economy. And when I say economy, I'm talking about other sectors of our economy that has been a source of revenue, like the cocoa, other crop production that we've been engaging, other services like tourism and all of that, which has seriously been affected. And with Galamsey also has come the issues of our exposure to the water pollution, the risks, and also some of the heavy metals that comes with the water pollution, cadmium, mercury, lead, all of them, you can think about them. And all of these come with some consequences that all of us are not prepared for. And even if we are, I don't think that we have the capacity to really take care of some of the risks that we are going to be exposed to in the future. Aside that, we've also seen that Galamsey has also exposed a lot of communities to several social vices. I recall we met with some women's group as to what they think about Galamsey, and the response was that initially they thought it was come to really help them improve their local commerce, as so to say, but eventually they saw other vices creeping in, their children no longer going to school, and also a lot of the things they used to do, criminal activities coming into the community and all of that. So all of this has sort of exposed communities to certain risks and certain social harms that initially was not a problem for them at all. And it has also come with significant trade-offs. I mean, this picture for me tells a lot. This is a mining site where you can see an excavator, and this is a particular community somewhere in the eastern region. This mining community has actually been mining close to a community, almost in the center of it. The communities have been complaining for a long time, but there was nobody to speak for the community. Neither the chiefs or the local government authority was willing to act on it. And it's sad to see that even if the community had to go and get water, they need to go past the mining site before they can get their source of water. And that's how come you see these two kids trying to walk across the mining site to go and get access to water that was close by. So it tells you how the state has neglected to protect citizens that they promise or they vow or sworn an oath to protect. And that's why I think that Galamsey, even though it's bringing, yes, some economic benefit, its other impact on society far outweigh any benefit that we can claim to get from that. I talked about the impact on water bodies, and significantly, I mean, the record shows that it's only in the Volta region, and maybe the Volta Lake that you don't see Galamsey affected. But aside that, every other major basin in this country, major river in this country is polluted by Galamsey. And the key concern here is also the fact that almost all of Ghana's water treatment facilities draws from the rivers and streams running across the country. And if all of these rivers are polluted with heavy metals like cyanide and mercury and the others, for which the water treatment process does not eliminate, then you obviously can infer that all of us, whether you are in the city or even at the community level where you are drinking directly from these polluted rivers, we are all at risk from health risks and associated diseases coming from the pollution that Galamsey is routing on our environment. Now, this is a typical, I would say, dynamic in some of the communities. You can see the water treatment facility, the area marked out in red, drawing directly from a polluted river like that, serving a town not so far off. And for almost every community in Ghana, this is the scenario that is playing out. In Accra, we draw our water from, say, Weja Reservoir. Weja Reservoir gets its water from the Dansy River, and the Dansy River comes from the Atiwa Forest. So along the route from Atiwa all the way to Weja, it gets contaminated, diverted, or even there's some winning in there and all of that. So all the pollution that goes into the reservoir, eventually we are going to be exposed to. And this is how serious Galamsey is really exposing all of us to it. Aside the impact on our water bodies, there's also very serious impact on our food systems. And this is something you realize that we have always been talking about, our water, but nobody's really talking about the food system. because we depend on the land for our food, we don't grow our crops in space, you need to be concerned about where your food is coming from. And it will interest you to know that most of the food crops that we are eating now, they're also coming from the same regions where pollution activity from Galamsey is happening. And pollution does not only come from somebody planting on the land where Galamsey has happened directly. It could also be that contamination can also spread. And we've seen this effect in many areas. If you go to a Newmont mining site in the Ahafo region, 5 kilometers away from where the mine site is actually happening, communities living 5 kilometers away are also affected by the pollution from the chemicals that the company is releasing even into their sediment ponds. So it tells you that Galamsey anywhere also raises risks for the crops that are produced, and that also translates to cash crops. You have also heard about recent concerns about Ghana's cocoa quality. A company supposedly in Swiss selling chocolate made from Ghana cocoa is currently facing some series of lawsuits as a result of heavy metal contamination. And we in Ghana are supposed to brace ourselves for the rippling effect of that civil lawsuits on our cocoa supply chain. So these are issues we need to, but interestingly, nobody is talking about it. The state doesn't seem to care about it. And this is where I believe that we need to pay attention and deal with it. Andre, please do prompt me and give me prompters if I'm not doing good with time, because it looks like I have quite a lot to speak about, but I'll try to keep it short after this point on the Galamsey. And then there are also several cross-sector impacts. Galamsey or mining or illegal mining, responsible mining as we see, is one particular that displaces everything else. It displaces water services, it displaces food security issues, it displaces health issues. So if you want to achieve, what do you call it, a socioeconomic development, as Ghana is saying, we want to develop sustainably, increase the prospect for Ghana, and the government is saying that they want to make Ghana the mining hub of Africa, then what we need to be preparing ourselves for is the fact that our food security issues, our water services, our health issues are seriously going to be compromised, because the way we are seeing it being done, there is no due diligence and there's no care or concern for the rights of communities where these mining activities are happening. We've seen how Galamsey has led to serious, I would say, losses in other sectors like the Ghana Cocoa Forest Emissions Reduction Program. So our government goes to sign a contract with the World Bank for $50 million for actions that will plant trees and also reduce deforestation. Then Galamsey comes to destroy all of them. Ghana Cocoa Board goes to AFDB for financing for cocoa rehabilitation, $300 million. Galamsey comes and destroys all of that. And because of Galamsey, our government is busy borrowing at the expense of the public to do rehabilitation. Now, the question we've always asked is, where are the mining companies who were busy mining in these areas? How come we are not going back to these mining companies to ensure that they pay up for the cost that they are routing on communities? We are the international community, asking the international community to release funds for climate resilience and adaptation. But when you really look at it, the problem is not coming from there. It's coming from our own leadership here, who are not taking the lives and also prioritizing the well-being of citizens as part of the things that we do to develop. And then also there are several other quality issues that we'll talk about our cocoa. Currently, as we speak, Ghana's cocoa production capacity has dropped from close to 1 million tons every year to less than half that capacity. And this is also because almost all the areas where Galamsey, where cocoa used to be grown and had good yields have all been destroyed by Galamsey. So it means that we're not going to be able to benefit as we should from the yields from the cocoa that we get from it. Then there's another issue in terms of environmental challenge that we are facing now, to do with air pollution. And this is the analysis on the left is coming from a World Bank Country Environment Analysis Report, somewhere 2020. And it's talking about the fact that nearly 16,000 people die from air pollution in Ghana. And this is coming from pollution, from electronic waste burning, and all of that. And it's a very, very serious issue, and we are not taking note of it. The vehicles that we encounter on the road, the exhaust that is being pushed out there into the environment and all of that contributes significantly to the air pollution that we are exposed to. And then it's something that usually we don't take. I know there's already national level processes to get some of these issues resolved, but the issue is still a problem that we really need to address. So this slide provides some information on some of the critical environmental issues Ghana is confronted with. And if you look at the numbers, if you look at the impact, if you look at the cost of GDP, they are all very staggering, and it's something that you cannot take for granted. Let's talk about overfishing. We have Chinese foreign fleets, fishing in our economic zones, whilst we tell local fisher folks that they can't fish during certain periods of the year, which is unfair, whilst Chinese fishing fleets are busy working. And then we are also experiencing a lot of coastal erosion as a result of the increasing sea level rises, also happening as a result of climate change. So these are issues that really are presently challenging, are big challenges for us in terms of environment. There is an issue of climate change, but I'm always very not so quick to really mention the issue of climate change, because the issues of flooding in Ghana is an issue that, particularly in the cities, you always say that they are all artificial flooding, may be coming from poor management of our waste. So we're not managing our waste well, is also clogging our drains and also allowing for some of these floods to occur. Maybe in the north, when there are issues of the Bagri Dam being opened and flooding coming to the southern part of Ghana, is also an issue. I think is also artificial, because we decided to put a few dams there and we did not engineer how the water will be used further downstream. And that is why we have issues of the flooding coming from Burkina Faso and also affecting communities in the south.
Sorry, sir. 5 more minutes, yeah?
5 more minutes. Okay. Okay, great. There's a lot to talk about, isn't it? Then you asked, I think there was also the point about how can government be held accountable for addressing these issues. So for me, if you're talking about environmental sustainability, if you look at Ghana's development pathways, everything government wants to do, and I'm taking this from budget statement 2024, from planting for food and jobs, everything government wants to do, water supply for cities and all that, it all depends on our ecosystems and also on our natural assets. So the best thing for government to do is to prioritize nature in its entirety, but not only take one and work with it. At the moment, government sees there's so much value in the minerals, in the gold, in the lithium, in the bauxite, but government has not taken time to ask themselves, what's the value of the water we get from Pra to service all the people in the Western region? What is the value of the water that comes from Atiwa Forest, servicing over 50 million people? Assuming you buy this water every day from a shop, how much is it going to cost? Then you realize that the gold or the lithium or the bauxite is not so much worth much more than the water service. And that's something I think that the states need to do. I also think that in terms of accountability, we don't have independent institutions, and that boils down to the issue of democracy. The way we are really implementing or experiencing democracy is not what it's supposed to be. We have state institutions who do not put out information voluntarily, but citizens must demand for those pieces of information before they get them. We have state institutions we must invoke laws to demand for some information before that is provided. And this is something that is not going to help with judicial use of our natural resources. There's also no transparency. We know how much, the government will tell you that if we do a particular mining venture in a particular area, it's going to bring about 5,000 jobs, it's going to bring 2,000 jobs. That is always never true. We've heard about the prospect for the job creation in the petroleum hub in the Western region around the Nzima area. They've quoted over 80,000 jobs to be created. We know that is not true. They talk about bauxite mining in the Eastern region and Yinehini going to create over 20,000 jobs. We know that is not true. There is no transparency, there's no accountability, because we are not being truthful to the issues that we really talk about. And then it also asks about what examples are there to show in terms of environmental restoration, particularly in relation to Galamsey. And you realize that citizens have asked for a state of emergency to allow government to sit and reflect on the best way forward. Ghana is not the only country that has had to invoke a state of emergency approach in dealing with Galamsey. Peru did it. China did it at some point. South Africa at some point in their life also did it. And it tells you that it can be done. We are not just taking advantage of it. We are still paying, we are still prioritizing wealth and gold over the lives of Ghanaians. There are several restoration opportunities or projects in parts of Africa. And the very good example I can give is Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, for some 20 years ago, used to have very degraded, arid lands, and they had to go through a national process of restoring their landscape. And now, from a dry patch country, you see very green, large vegetation in almost all of their areas. And this is something that can be done. We've also heard of the Green Great Wall Initiative that is being implemented in the Sahel regions of Africa. It's starting, it's moving, it's slow, but the prospect for success is great. So for me, I think it can be done. If you go to the northern parts of Ghana, there are projects that are being run by World Vision that is deploying initiatives like naturally assisted regeneration initiatives. And there's also what you call farmer assisted natural regeneration. All these are assisting nature to develop. So we know in the north it's very dry in some parts. So you see a stump, then you help it by pruning and for the shrubs to turn into trees. And these are ways that very successful initiatives have been initiated in the northern part of the country, and it's been very, very successful. How can communities also balance economic development? I think that that lies with, answering that question lies with our institutions really doing a comprehensive analysis of the assets that we have as a state. For a long time, we've talked about development only in terms of what we can take and sell, but we are not also talking about what we can take, add value, and maintain as it is, and then use that to leverage for international funding. We talked that there's opportunity for carbon-based initiative for projects that communities can do, several opportunities for tourism. There are countries in this world who don't have the minerals Ghana has got, like Costa Rica, like Ecuador, but are thriving just by preserving their ecosystems, paying for the ecosystems, and also exploring green commodity value chains. And that's an opportunity that we are not leveraging. I like government's program to say one district, one factory. But if we are really going to do that, that means that we need to ensure production, and that production should be sustainable to ensure that the factories can keep using the raw materials from the farms or from wherever to produce the goods that can sell to the world. But right now, if you look at how we are projecting one district, one factory, but at the same time, the very land that are going to be the productive spaces for the production of raw materials and all that, we are destroying them with Galamsey and all the mining interests of the state. Then it tells you that the state is not ensuring a balance when it comes to pushing for sustainable development. So there is a lot to be done, and we need to assess all our assets equally and not prioritize one over the other. I'm sure there will be opportunity to speak to in there to some of these issues when questions come from the floor. So I'll end here, and I welcome any questions that may come. Thank you.
Wow. I've spent a bit of time kind of looking into Galamsey and the effect and the impact, but seeing it all together like this is quite it's very harrowing, I would say. Okay, Fiavi.
Okay, the speaker made mention of Volta region being the only region that has not been affected by Galamsey. And in his presentation, it was like government has been so adamant to protect the lives of Ghanaians. But since the diasporas want to come in, what are the measures to protect Volta region from taking the share of Galamsey and then the environmental degradation?
That's a very good question. Sure, let me answer that. So I think you've asked a very good question, and I believe that to really keep Volta region from the menace of Galamsey will start with strong local advocacy. And that local advocacy can benefit from the international, our brothers and sisters out there also adding their voices to it. Sometimes when you see some of these local advocacies going on, you see people get discouraged because the international brothers and sisters out there don't support. And I recall one time I managed to get myself onto a school's platform, and I was talking about mining, environmental sustainability. And the people who came very hard at me were the people who were living abroad. And all that they said was that if I'm in the US, if US didn't use their resources, how did they get here? And so if I'm in Ghana and you are saying that we shouldn't use our resources, we shouldn't, and they will tell you that mining is inevitable or environmental destruction is inevitable if you do mining, and we need mining to develop. Now, the question is, we've done mining for over a century. I mean, how is it that we think that doing mining now with the little space that we have is going to change anything? So I think that, yes, to start with, we need to have a very strong local advocacy. And then we also need to have a network of support from the international community, from groups that can really support some of these local advocates. Otherwise, I mean, it's going to, but it will all eventually rely on local strongholds, local communities, local people championing some of these advocacy, and very strong diasporan support system coming to add to that. Because as you see, I was really happy that when our president was at the UN, we had some Ghanaians out there go and meet the president and tell him that, look, what you are doing, you shouldn't be here because you should go back home and fix the water bodies. And that's something I think that we need to be doing. We shouldn't, but unfortunately, we see some Ghanaians take their political affiliations from Ghana when they go to the international, when they go out there. So when they are talking about issues that really bothers on human rights, on well-being, they even bring in those political interests and affiliations and alignment, and can also somewhat discourage some of these advocacy actions locally. So I think that it's important, but building strong local advocacy systems is a way to go.
Bontry.
Good again. Thank you very, very much for your presentation, brother Bosu. I wanted to ask you: have you read either Kwame Nkrumah's Neocolonialism or his Class Struggle, or like say Frantz Fanon, Black Skin, White Masks? Have you read any of those books?
I've read some books by Nkrumah, but maybe I don't know which particular one you are referring to, because it comes in a range. Yeah.
Okay, because the issue I see with so much of the Galamsey conversation is that we're starting it from a really like a stage where we are not aware that our ancestors, to call Nkrumah an ancestor, has already predicted that this was coming around our national resources. We are in that is the condition we're in. And actually that's why I've been trying to figure out how to frame this conversation, because I was understanding that it was going to be sort of a conversation positing that returned Africans, whether it be historical diaspora or returnees, as they used to call us, are actually shaping up to become an oppressive force in of themselves. But it looks like this is going to be a conversation, and I would rightly agree with that positioning, about neocolonialism, which Nkrumah has already described. Everything you are saying around our resources, not only not being used for our benefit, but being intentionally used to antagonize us, have already been predicted. We have a situation now where I always compare the Galamsey practitioners with drug dealers in the West, Black boys who are dealing drugs in the West. Same way, they don't have the shipping equipment and the logistics equipment to bring drugs into the country. Here in Ghana, we do not have, the boys who are doing the Galamsey do not have shipping to bring in the earth movers and the caterpillars. They don't have the money to clear those things. They don't have the diplomats who are giving the Chinese buyers, sorry about that, They don't have the Chinese buyers to give them visa access to the country and all of this. So these are things that are happening at a level that if you leave out the political machinery that is engineering this, you give a beautiful presentation, but the presentation doesn't cover facts that are already known on the ground. So then you do your presentation a disservice, because if you are not factoring in accepted facts that have been accepted by economists of all kinds for 50, 60 years, that are in Nkrumah's books, then in 2024, if you're making reference to a subject without those key elements, then you do yourself a disservice to help people understand, whether they are here in Ghana or whether they are abroad, what exactly is going on. Because if you've got people who are listening to your presentation thinking that these boys who are doing it are the problem, it's the same as people who are saying that people on street corners in various Western urban areas have got access to the Colombian cartels and the shipping and the helicopters and all of that brings the things to the country. We have to understand what the real problem is, and that is known. So I would please ask, those 3 books that I've recommended, please look them up, read them, and add them. You won't take away anything, because all the facts and figures you are bringing are still in play. All it will do is add a lot of nuance and needed context, so that when people are listening to your presentation, they are aware of what's really going on. They don't think that the people who are in the news, the people who are being captured by the media, are the ones who have got anything to do with the machine that is really happening, the mechanics of this neo-colonial crime, atrocity that Galamsey is. You understand? So thank you very much for your presentation again. But to make your presentation even better, I would please ask that you add that our leaders and our scholars, our whatever you want to call them, our elders have done the work to make our work easier. We are supposed to stand on their shoulders to make our work then stronger and to make their work more relevant to the current time. If we leave it out, then we're starting from scratch every time. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Maybe a little clarification, which is good. Bonchi. So I think I agree with you. And I think you'd be surprised to know from me that I don't believe it is the people we see in the pits who are responsible for the Galamsey. The Galamsey, as we describe it now, is not about those who are in the pits with their headpans and pickaxes and trying to get something to go and feed their families. No, that is not what Galamsey is about now. Galamsey now, just like you rightly described, is more an issue run by cartels of the state, syndicates who bring in resources. And I'll tell you, it's not even the Chinese who are responsible for this. It's Ghanaians who are fronting for the Chinese, Ghanaians' own greed. And just like you mentioned, if you're supposed to go back to the issues of neocolonialism and even slavery and all of that, the question is, who sold us into slavery? We went, captured our own people and handed them over. And that is the same thing we're experiencing now. You see the state that has got the resources, the machinery, everything to enforce the laws, and they tell you that vote for us. When you vote for us and we win the election, in 3 months we'll make your water bodies clean. So we know what is happening. We just refuse to deal with it because we have an interest in the gold. Yes, the world, it will surprise you, the world is finding ways to ensure sustainability in all of some of these minerals and all of that. They started with black diamonds. They brought in some measures and regulations to deal with the atrocities associated with the extraction of diamonds. Now the world is just cracking its brain, trying to find out how can we ensure that there is sustainable gold? Because the issue is not about some Chinese coming down to Ghana to go to the Western region to do Galamsey over there. It is a Ghanaian that goes to China, brings the Chinese and says, I need your money, I need your machinery. It's more of an investment. So the question is, what kind of investment are we inviting into this country? And this is something that is led by our own leaders. So the person in the pit we see on television, they are just for the optics, but those people really behind. And that's how can you have issues where persons connected to the government or the party in power are involved in illegalities, the minister comes out publicly to say, this person, the chairperson for Wontumi, I should say, chairperson for the MPP in Ashanti region is involved in illegality, but the police refuse to even crack their whip on such a person. And this is what is happening all across the country. And you see PCs, parliamentary candidates, everybody promising, I will allow you to do Galamsey if you vote for me. This is impunity at its highest level because the state agency that is supposed to secure the well-being of citizens have refused to do that. And that is something I think we cannot always blame the West or other people for what we are experiencing. A lot of the problem we are facing is coming from our own people. And that is why when we are communicating the issues, we need to be very, very direct. We should not exonerate our leadership. They have failed Ghanaians, not foreigners failing Ghanaians. It is our own leaders failing Ghanaians. And that is why the description of democracy needs to be dealt with, because there are several nuances. And when you come to Ghana, I don't think that we are implementing democracy as it should.
Wow. Okay, we're getting deep. Ken, can you keep it to like 2 minutes, only because we're a little bit over. We are gonna have an open discussion in a few, like in the second section. So Ken, 2 minutes, please.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My question, you already answered it a bit in the first question that you answered, but I'll have still ask it, so maybe you can throw more light on it. So I'm not a Ghanaian actually, but for the past 2 years, I've been spending my life between Ghana and Kenya. Now we are talking about Galamsey, and I think Galamsey has gotten the attention of many Ghanaians and beyond only when Galamsey has become really worse in the country. So it has escalated to the point now, or everybody's talking about it. So now we are trying to fight Galamsey. While we are trying to fight Galamsey, how can we also take precautions or also create awareness about other threats to our environment? You also mentioned earlier in the presentation about air pollution, because I think as much as we expect government to, solve problems when they escalated, I think we also have a role to play to prevent, from getting to these problems. You get what I mean? He also said just now that our leaders are the problem, but there are also keys growing up today. There are also future leaders. You get, so how can we also prevent them, give them the right education to also make sure there are precautions taken, not only Galamsey but other threats to the environment. That's my question.
Ken, because I think Daryl's already covered those points, can we come back to that later? Is that okay?
All right, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So